Hi, everyone. This is Zach Hawkins, Director of Student Affairs Development at UNC-Chapel Hill, and this is Inside Student Affairs, our web series that allows you to take a deep dive into the world of UNC Student Affairs, the leaders who are making a difference, and the way that Student Affairs has uniquely, through this pandemic, held the university up and is helping us transition back to normal. Today, with me, I have some exciting guests. Allan Blattner, who's the Executive Director of Campus Housing, and Dr. Aaron Bachenheimer, Executive Director of Off-Campus Student Life. How are you all doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Doing
Good.
great. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Aaron, and I guess I'll start with you. Tell people a little bit about your time at Carolina and a little overview of your office.
Sure. So just briefly, I actually came to Carolina in 2009 as a doctoral graduate assistant. So I was doing my full-time doctoral work at NC State. And I'm not going to do the Go Wolfpack thing because I'm a Tar Heel, but do very much appreciate my time at NC State and had a terrific experience in their higher ed program. And so I worked here at Carolina in what is now referred to as Student Life and Leadership, was then Carolina Leadership Development, then moved over to the Dean of Students office and spent some time there, and then moved over to the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life. At that time, both the director and assistant director of that office had moved on. They needed some support, and I had been a full-time director of Fraternity and Sorority Life at Appalachian State prior to coming to Carolina. And so those were sort of some spaces that I worked in while I was completing my full-time doctoral program at State. And once I was done with the program in terms of my coursework and just working on the dissertation, I applied for and was hired as the Associate Dean and Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life and Community Involvement. And that was in kind of late 2010, early 2011, and served in that role until 2017, when we created this new office and opportunity as Director of Off-Campus Student Life and Community Partnerships. And so I've been in that role now since 2017. And, the goal of the office is to provide education, advising, resources, and support for all Carolina students, undergraduate, graduate, and professional, through what I kind of refer to as three phases of kind of living. One is if you're living on campus and you're thinking about living off campus, we really try to engage in partnership with Housing and Residence Life to talk about, the thought process, the decision-making process, and make sure that if students are thinking about on or off campus, that they have the information that they need to make the most informed decision. For many students, that will be to stay on campus. And we promote a philosophy of living on for at least your first 2 years for undergraduate students. But then we know, developmentally and for a host of other reasons, students may choose to move off campus. And so then we're involved with that sort of second phase of helping students transition to live off campus, helping them thinking about rights and responsibilities of living in the community, understanding the resources that are available to them through student legal services and other resources to help make sure that transition is smooth and successful. And then that third phase, which would apply to, again, sort of all students, would be just living off campus and helping support students in their off-campus living environment, wherever that is, engaging with the community and making sure that the community's voices are heard and that students understand the community's expectations, intervening when there needs to be intervention, and partnering with a number of local community agencies, including local municipalities, nonprofits, businesses, to help support a healthy and thriving off-campus living environment for everybody in kind of the greater Chapel Hill-Carrboro community. So that's the role we play, and that's how we try to engage. And we don't do anything by ourselves. Everything we do is in partnership with either campus partners. Allan is a good example of somebody that I work with very closely, frequently, on a host of programming opportunities, and then a number of off-campus partners, many of which I've already mentioned.
Good, thank you, Allan.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be here. I've been at UNC since 2015. Before that, spent 15 years down the road at UNC Charlotte. And I've spent my entire career in student housing, from when I was an RA straight through graduate school and on into the executive director role. And so feel very fortunate to be able to serve this amazing institution by providing housing for really the full gamut of our student population. Because we do have kind of a lesser known part of our operation is our graduate and family housing. Beatty Hill serves that population. There's about 600 beds out there for those folks. But the main thrust of our operation is on main campus, where we house about 8,500 undergraduate students. And we also have an affiliate relationship with Granville Towers. So all totaled, it's about 10,000 beds that we get to offer to our Tar Heels. We have a first-year live-in requirement. We think that's incredibly important as a solid landing space for students. Many campuses have that, but here we really try and not just require that you physically occupy the space, but that we really round out that experience with a host of onboarding programming, developmental programming, to get you ready for 4 years of success. And that's really what we're designed to do. But that's only 40% of our bed capacity. The other 60% are returning students, sophomores, juniors, and seniors that elect to stay on campus. As Aaron talked about, we really do try and focus on those first 2 years. Developmentally, they are the most important in terms of securing that solid footing. But we have about 15% of the junior and senior class that will stay on campus with us. Many Tar Heels will live with us for all 4 years. Obviously, don't do this alone. As Aaron mentioned, huge campus partnerships, off-campus partnerships, and then an amazing staff. Because under the umbrella of Carolina Housing, we've got facilities and maintenance and grounds. We've got all the programming that goes into the buildings, and then obviously a huge back end of the operation to make sure the finances are right and the people are in the right rooms and the keys work and all those kinds of things. So all totaled, just really proud of the operation we run and the service we offer to students. The other piece of this, and this is very often where soon-to-be students get their first taste of Carolina Housing, is when our summer conference program, and we get all the little basketball dudes and dudettes running around, and so very often that's people's first experience here. And we're proud to be a partner with athletics and others to offer those programs, academic camps, all the different things that really give people an early look at what their future as a Tar Heel might be like.
Yeah, I actually spent quite a few summers in Chapel Hill in Carmichael.
There we go.
Yep, for a
And
summer
look at you
camp. Yep, look at me now. It's addictive.
Yeah, I lived in Granville for soccer camp when I was a kid, and basketball. So
there you go.
No, way to go. And so both of you, I mean, no small operation. And what you do not only is developmental for the students, as you mentioned, but in many cases it helps with their ability to graduate, and in your case, Aaron, with town gown relations. And so one of the things that of course, we all know that COVID-19 has played an incredible role in changing the way that we do business. And so, Allan, I know for you, you probably felt that more than most. And so just to sort of be clear, talk about how many students we have on campus,
Sure.
And sort of how it has impacted your work and some of the things that you've learned over the
Yeah.
last year.
Well, let me take you through the roller coaster ride we've been on, because last July, we were almost full. Every bed on campus was ready to be occupied. And then, of course, the pandemic started to pick up speed, and we work with the university to do our first round of what we call dedensification. And so a number of our students either elected to stay home or move into other locations. So by the time we opened in August, we were around about 4,800 to 5,000 students on campus. And then, the pandemic continued to have impacts on campus, and the university decided to make another pivot when we sent most of our students home, or at least off campus. And so after that, we had about 1,000 students living on campus. So if you remember that big number of 10,000, we're now, down around 10 to 13% of our normal capacity. This spring, we've been able to rebuild. We've got about 3,500 students that live with us now, all in single rooms. We really learned a lot from the fall, made some adjustments. The advent of the testing program that the university's put into place has been a game changer for us. And then the other thing that we had to learn a little bit about pretty quickly was isolation and quarantine housing. We run all of that for both on campus, and if students who are off campus are in a particular bind with being able to find a safe place to do their isolation or quarantine, they can come onto campus. We've had upwards of about 600 students through that program since July. Right now, I'm thankful to say there's only 3 people in it, but at its peak, we had 167 people at one time in isolation and quarantine housing. And again, hats off to the staff, not just here, but in dining, in the Dean of Students office, in campus health, who have really kind of bonded together to try and figure out how to support students through what is probably the most unnatural experience they'll ever have. They come here to connect. They come onto campus. Our buildings are designed to foster connections. And now all of a sudden, the past 8 months, we've had to use them to increase separation. And so it's been a very strange exercise for us, but it's one we've done very well, we think. We've had great feedback from students, and was an incredibly important service for us.
No, thank you for that. And thank you for sort of changing all of your operations of students. And Aaron, because of that dash to leave campus, I know that a lot of that shifted to you and some of the work, and you've had to also adapt not only your programming, but add some programming to make sure that students are interfacing well off campus and staying connected.
Yeah, so I mean, one of our really signature programs that we're involved in as a coordinating partner is the Good Neighbor Initiative, and this is a program that's gone on in partnership with the town of Chapel Hill, the town of Carrboro, a number of local nonprofits, including the Marion Cheek Jackson Center and Empowerment. We have been, engaged in the community, helping students understand, as I mentioned, their responsibilities of living in the community, understanding what it means to be a contributing community partner, developing relationships with your neighbors. So that's a program that's been around since 2004, and we have been really engaged, and it involves a lot of in-person contact. At the start of every fall, we go out into the community, we recruit 100 volunteers, we knock on 1,200 doors, we talk to students face to face. We host a community cookout that brings 500 student and non-student community members together to talk about living in community. Well, none of that could happen right this year, and so we really had to work with both campus and community partners to pivot almost entirely into virtual environments, utilizing our monthly Tar Heel Citizen Times newsletter, utilizing our social media, utilizing things like yard signs and bus signs to really share messages related to kind of what we call traditional good neighbor messaging, which includes things like, be mindful of noise and understand parking regulations and the occupancy ordinance and alcohol laws and things like that. So all of that same kind of good neighbor messaging that we always share. We also spent this fall pushing a lot of messaging related to public health, right? So both CDC and North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and Orange County Health Department and campus health messaging around being safe, the 3 W's, doing the things that students need to do to keep themselves and their roommates and their friends and community members healthy and well. Also emphasizing state orders and campus, the UNC COVID community standards. So things like occupancy, or not occupancy, but gathering limits, right? Because the state imposed some social gathering limits, things like mask wearing and physical distancing requirements. So we incorporated that messaging in the Good Neighbor Initiative. And then really the third piece, which really intertwines with both what we have historically done and the first 2 things I just talked about, was really engaging students on the heels of the Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd, was to really talk about how behavior as it pertains to living off campus and behavior in the context of COVID really matters in terms of how we talk about social justice and racial justice, because a lot of our off-campus students live in two neighborhoods in particular, Northside and Pine Knolls, which are historically African-American communities. And so, and as we know, African-American communities and in addition, communities of elderly populations and low-income populations, which again apply to both of the neighborhoods that I was just talking about, are some of our high-risk communities. And so neighbors, long-term neighbors in those communities, were particularly concerned about COVID and their own health and well-being, and as it pertained to student behavior. And so we really also wanted to incorporate, and did incorporate with all those community partners, a lot of talking about, how does your behavior impact the community that you're a part of, and understanding the history of the communities that you live in to help guide what is appropriate behavior. And so that really was a big part of what we did. We also formulated a weekly Monday morning call with a number of community partners, including UNC Police, Chapel Hill Police, the Orange County Health Department, and a number of other partners, to identify off-campus behavioral concerns or public health concerns, and then discuss how and when was the most appropriate way to engage students who might be involved in those situations, to help provide more education, to help make sure that if there were concerning behaviors, those behaviors didn't continue. This is stuff we've always done around things like loud parties and trash and those parking, but really with now an added level of importance with respect to public health because of concerns about social gatherings and lack of mask wearing and physical distancing. So, I could talk on, but that was a lot of our focus this year. And I guess I should also just say, because Allan talked about the de-densification of campus.
Yeah.
Students still live off campus, and we saw what I call like a lot of moving of deck chairs. Like the sublease market was very active this year. There was a lot of movement in the off-campus housing community in like August and September, when that usually, we're usually done by June and July with students knowing where they're going to live. Well, there was a lot of transition, but we have upwards of 20,000 students living off campus always, and we still have upwards of 20,000 students living off campus, just some moving around of parts and pieces. And so we had to stay, the Good Neighbor Initiative is usually really intensely focused on the first couple weeks of the semester, and then we do some programming throughout the year. The Good Neighbor Initiative and our efforts off campus to support students and the community has been full gas forward from the middle of last summer till today. We haven't let up. We continue to do messaging. We continue to engage students. We continue to engage landlords and community partners and our municipal partners to help sustain messaging and accountability in the community for Carolina students. So that's been a big part of our work, is just a sustained effort around education on all the topics that I mentioned since last year.
Yeah, and the thing is, go ahead, Allan.
I was going to say, it's really interesting that kind of metaphor of the gas pedal being pressed all the way through, because throughout the entire thing on main campus, we have had students living with us. Even when we closed, and we had an incredible role to play in supporting our hardship students. International students who couldn't go home, didn't want to go home, maybe because of what was transpiring. So all different kinds of needs that came up. And again, they're sitting on campus in a space that's designed for 10,000, and there may only be 1,000 of them. So how do you take advantage of that disconnection for public health, but also keep their mental health kind of top of mind, that they need to see other people, that they need to engage in some ways? And so we had to do the same kinds of things, pivoting our programming models, trying to figure out what the right balance and the right way to achieve a level of engagement that was both safe and healthy. Working with our students, and RHA has been a huge partner. That's our residents student government. They're an incredible partner with this, and in offering things that are not only attractive to students, but that also will just give them some sense of normalcy in this incredibly disjointed, especially first year experience. I really feel for our first year students. I got a first year student right now at App. So I'm living through this on both sides of the fence. And really, really challenging, but that notion of the gas pedal has always been pressed through this thing, I think is a really good notion. We did different things at different points, but it's been full stream ahead.
Yeah, it's just showed also that, this, both of what you just said shows the interconnectedness of the work that you do, right? Because yours is sort of, off-campus skills that you will learn for life. As someone who lives in a neighborhood, those are things that you need to learn now, and you can tell when people don't. But then, Allan, you really sort of spoke to the mental health piece of it, and how interconnected, all of the aspects of college life happening inside the dorm, and through anecdote, a lot of times people will tell you that sort of story, right? What they learned, what they didn't, people that they were able to study with, et cetera, and how it made a difference and how they were able to build from it. And so I think it's also a good transition to, what next year looks like, Allan. And I'm suspecting that people will expect us to be in full mode. And are you sort of, where do you think we will land? And again, all of this is tentative, given vaccines and on. I'll give that disclaimer.
Everything's got a big asterisk right now.
Everything's got a big asterisk. I wanted to see if you could talk about what that means in light of where we are now and how we get to August with full steam ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So it obviously starts with the middle ground of summer. We will continue to offer summer housing as we always have. And we're going to continue to do that in single rooms with the same kind of social distancing, allowing more vaccine to get out there, allowing as much time to pass. But then when we flip the switch to fall, right now we are planning on returning to double rooms. The first year living requirement for our students coming in is in play. We expect them to come onto campus with us. We are actively recruiting any returning students that want to come back to campus. We've actually got a special program we've designed because we do realize they missed out on that traditional experience. And so typically upper class students are kind of pockmarked all over campus, and that juniors would live with seniors. And we're doing specifically designed sophomore buildings to mimic the first year building that they would have lived in. Just to try and if they're interested, we want to give them that experience back to the best of our ability. So right now, we are planning to fill, near normal in terms of capacity. We are going to continue to hold 2 buildings offline for isolation and quarantine. Hope we don't need them, but want to make sure that we're ready if we do. There's ongoing conversations about what the testing program will look like and all the other things that, our current safety protocols that help to keep this community safe. And so we're excited. We're hiring RAs. We're doing all the things that, to hopefully give people just as much sense of normalcy as we can.
Yeah, and that's what we hear from parents a lot. They want us to transition. They want us to move. And speaking of that, Aaron, as we do that, what's the current things that you're hearing from the parent alumni community, and what's your advice to help them with sort of student movement forward? Because again, as we move forward, your 20,000 is never going to change, but the ability to have all hands on deck is going to be important.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a lot from parents this year. I've talked to a number of parents, and parents aren't a monolithic group. They reflect a broad spectrum of philosophy and perspective and life experiences themselves, and they have different thoughts and opinions about COVID and the environment around COVID. I think the universal tie, and will come as no surprise to anybody who's listening, this is parents want the best for their kids, right? And so, I think a universal theme is I just want my student to have a normal experience as best as possible, and we have some parents that are maybe more risk averse than others, or more risk tolerant than others. And we have students who are more risk averse and risk tolerant than others. But, universally, parents want the best for their students, and they want their students to have a Carolina experience and a college experience. And so, when we talk to parents, we've just tried to help focus on how to do that, right? How to help your student and how to help your student think about, and we have the same conversation with students, right? Allan talked about mental health. I mean, the first thing that happens when I talk to students who come to community attention because of perhaps a larger than they should have had social gathering, right, is we don't expect you to sit in your room and stare at the wall for 10 months. It's not good for you. It's not good for your mental health and well-being. I have a family that I engage with and interact with every day in my home. And your roommates and your friends are your college family when you're away from home. And I'm speaking predominantly about undergraduates now, of course, although this impacts graduate students in many ways as well. But so, we just talk about how to do things appropriately and responsibly. And as we start to see what I would call kind of the broader community open back up, so to speak, restaurants and public gathering opportunities open back up, how to think about doing that in a way that continues to get us where we all want to be, which is back in classrooms, back at sporting events, back patronizing our downtown businesses and restaurants who have carried on for generations and alumni speak about with great fondness, and that we want to be around for the next generation of Tar Heels. And so, how to support those businesses and how to support your networking and your friendship development in ways that's socially responsible, that's consistent with public health guidelines and expectations, that's consistent with the community standards, and that gets us back to where we all want to be. And I think that message has resonated with parents. I'm not here to tell you, how to talk to your students, and I'm not here to tell students how to live their lives. I try to just give them some helpful guidance, and give them some opportunity to sort of think about perspective taking, that, for our students, they may have their own opinion, but they live in a community. They live in a town. They live around non-students and students, by the way, because one of the things we have heard from this year is students who are concerned about their peers' behavior. And so, we try to help reflect back to students who we talk to that, this is in some ways about sort of optics, and people are still concerned. And yes, vaccines are rolling out, and yes, things seem to be trending in the right direction, but there's a reason why they're trending in the right direction, because people by and large have been doing what we've asked them to do, and we need to keep doing that a little bit longer. And so, it's hard to ask people to be patient, and we're not asking them to do anything different than what the expectations are. We're just asking them to think about the community that they're a part of, think about their friends and peers and family members, and to continue to do the things that will get us all back to where we want to ultimately be, which is as close to a normal collegiate experience as we can offer as we head towards fall 21.
Yeah. Allan?
Yeah, I guess, and I'm going to go back to something that very often is part of my playbook when we talk to parents and families and Aaron talked about how the normal cadence of off-campus housing is a little disrupted this year, but sometimes students and families get caught up in what I would perceive as kind of a tidal wave of information, and they feel pressure because they think this wave is looming and it's going to come crashing down. So students then sometimes, especially first-year students early in their time, September, October, they feel this enormous pressure to make a decision about next year. Very often, they don't even know their roommate's last name yet, or where their first class is, and they're getting hit by the off-campus, marketing, and people are talking about this place is filling up, and this, and so.
And often they're peers, right? They're peers,
absolutely.
whether if they're older peers or friends who are like, we got to do this, we got to do this.
That's right. We got to move. And so Aaron and I have spent a lot of time myth busting, because that's not true. There is always good housing out there. Some properties may be fuller than others. So we really try to take the air out of the tires a little bit and let them know that they've got time to make these decisions. Deciding now whether you like your roommate enough to live with them next year, give that time, because that lease is binding. And so really just encourage, families, A, to talk about it, and B, to talk with us about what they're hearing, because we can do a little bit of fact checking and myth busting, because it's often not as dire or as short term as it seems. you've got a bit more time to make those decisions, to think through the finances and the ramifications of bringing a car or not, that can get really overwhelming at a time when students are trying to, especially in the middle of the pandemic, just trying to keep a lid on it. And so part of the mental health, I think, of this is keeping perspective on housing choice, keeping perspective on what time you have in order to make those important decisions, and that there are resources and supports to be able to do that.
Yeah, and Alan and I talk about these things in non-COVID environments a lot too, right? I mean, I talked about at the very beginning about making sure that students and their decision circle, right, which might include parents or potential roommates, family members, that have all of the necessary information to make the best choice for them and their community, right? And every family circumstances are going to be a little bit different, and I don't operate from a live on, live off perspective beyond the philosophical, really, first 2 years perspective. What I try to do is just make sure that students have all the information that they need to make the most informed decision, because like Alan mentioned, there's some myths out there. Family members I'll talk to parents and they'll say, well, my student wants to move off campus because we all agreed that it's just less expensive to live off campus. And I'll say, well, maybe, but have you done the apples to apples comparison? Do you know, for example, that Ram Village, which is our sort of what I would call kind of like highest end on campus undergraduate living environment, is below the average cost for living off campus for like the 20 most popular student rental communities, right? So we try to help just myth bust a little bit and have everybody sort of slow down, get all the information that they need to make an informed decision, and then with all the available information, make the best choice.
No, thank you. And the information is key. And myth busting is key. And that's one of the things, again, as we send this out to all the platforms for student affairs, we'll include it in our newsletter to our parents and donors and folks who are thinking about giving to us, because we want to make sure that not only do they learn more about who you are and the work that you're doing and how we're making the university move, so they can pass it on, right? If you know better, you'll share better information, hopefully. But I did want to, as we close, I wanted to hear, at least one thing that you're doing that is exciting and people sort of don't know about Aaron. I mean, Alan, I know you're building out a gaming space that is pretty cool, and Aaron, you just are doing some cool things in the community. And then tell people where to find you, so that if anyone decides to share this, we know exactly how to reach out to you.
Yeah. Well, you stole my thunder there. I'm going to talk about our new gaming arena, which was supposed to launch last March, but unfortunately, we know what happened last March. But it's an incredible space done with incredible both on-campus corporate and off-campus partnerships. It's a 38-seat gaming arena that will be the competitive home to the Tar Heel Gaming Club. There's talk of it being an ACC sport at some point. The NCAA is looking at it, and so we're in on the ground floor of something that's pretty exciting. What I really love about about our space, and they're popping up on campuses all over, but ours is free to students because we really think that it's important. We want to get the non-traditional groups who maybe don't often game to come on in and have that experience. They may love it, they may hate it, but at least they've tried it. And this goes along with some other things. We built a makerspace 2 years ago. We built a painting studio a few years ago. We're just trying to add these kind of value add propositions to the residential experience that just allow them to try something new without having to go very far. And that, of course, joins we run the food pantry on campus out of Carolina Housing, out of one of our residence halls. And so it's those kinds of spaces that differentiate on-campus residential living from off-campus apartment living. And so I don't know what's next for us, but we've got a strategic planning session next week. And if people want to get in touch with me ever through our website, through email, I don't know exactly how you want to share contact info, but that's probably the easiest way to reach out to me, and I'd love to engage.
Yeah, well, thank you. And those are a few more reasons to say go Heels.
That's right.
I think that gaming operation is going to be cool. And as part of our basic needs initiative, of course, we have the food pantry, and of course, people, if they'd like, can support the gaming operation. So, Aaron, talk about some of the cool things you have going on and how they can find you.
Sure. So, one thing that's new for us this semester is what I would call kind of a pilot program. It's called our Student Outreach Coordinators program, where we've hired a team of 6 students that are helping us do both proactive and kind of what I call reactive student outreach into the community. They're connecting proactively with student organizations and student groups on campus to talk about living off campus and rights and responsibilities. And then they're helping us connect with students that have come to community attention off campus, reaching out to them, offering help in a peer-to-peer kind of support way, saying, you're not in trouble. We just want to talk to you because we know that some behavior you engaged in came to community attention, and we want to reach out to you as fellow Tar Heels and talk to you about how we can do better together the next time. And so that's been a really neat program so far, and we're excited about it. And then we continue to offer one of our kind of signature programs, which is called Party Police Free, which is a party registration program in the town of Chapel Hill. It's a partnership with the town where UNC students can register a social gathering with our office, and they get some education up front about sort of social host responsibility and liability, expectations of the community, very brief educational session. And then if they have a gathering and it comes to community attention, instead of the police showing up at their front door, they'll get a call or a text message just to say, hey, somebody has called us. You have 20 minutes to kind of address the complaint. And as long as you do that, you never hear or see from the police again. And it's a really good way to allow students to take responsibility and leadership for their social gathering. And it really helps our local law enforcement agency with some capacity challenges that we're faced with in Chapel Hill. And so it's been a really good partnership program for us for the last couple of years. And we're looking forward to continuing that effort as we kind of emerge from COVID. People can connect with us we have 2 websites, offcampus.unc.edu and offcampushousing.unc.edu. We're pretty active on social media. So our Instagram and Twitter account hashtag or handles are the same. It's at UNC_off-campus. And you can reach us any of those ways, and we'd love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Well, I hope people learned a ton today. And again, those are opportunities that you can continue to support. You can visit any of the UNC Student Affairs Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as our website. And we have these priorities outlined so that people that want to get more information can. And also, if you want to give UNC is coming up on March 30th. So make sure that you take the time to do that, support the Tar Heels, and of course, do that before the end of the fiscal year on June 30th. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. And thank you for everything you do for UNC students, our families, and our community. And this has been another great episode of Inside Student Affairs, talking about the people who are making an incredible difference for our campus and how we are moving UNC forward. Thank you.
Go Heels.
Go Heels.